You don't know the power of the dark side.
The Law Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, is now part of the Red 5 network. Red 5 is a network of podcast shows aimed at bringing great quality content, especially Star Wars. And so look forward to some awesome collaborations on the Red 5 network with the Law Be With You podcast show. Welcome to the Law Be With You podcast show, which is on Christian Fandom Geek. We're live streaming. This is a new venture for the show. Omar, you're one of the major collaborators on the show, a font of knowledge, a guru of cosmic wizardry in comic books and lore and canon. Okay.
Well,
we've just had the Star Wars episode on the Anchor podcast, which was an absolutely awesome conversation. And now we're going to be talking about the Green Lantern. And so, before we go into the Green Lantern a second, what got you into comic books in the first place? And we have spoken about this before, but we're going to talk about that again because it's a really awesome story.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what it was called at the time, but I was a Fanderson. Only years later, I found out what that was. But I was a massive fan of Jerry Anderson's TV shows, the puppet ones. Yeah. So Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, Stingray. And from there, as a child, these were obviously reruns in the early 90s. I saw that you could get the comics and stuff like that. And a friend of mine, this was at primary school, every Monday, he used to get, his parents used to get the Sunday Times, and they used to have a section for kids called the Fun Day Times, and it used to have a clipping of Thunderbirds. It was like a Thunderbird comic strip. And I started to read those and really got into it. And then they actually started to do, I think it was every fortnight, they used to have a Thunderbird comic. I think it was about 30p or something like that. That was like part of my pocket money. So been collecting comics since then, really.
Very nice. Thunderbirds are awesome as well. I remember those. I was into them as well. Okay, so now, so we know that I know that you're a big comic book guy. You're into canon. You love various comic book franchises from Marvel and DC. But I know one very close to your heart is the Green Lantern. Yeah. For those, there'll be guys and gals that are watching this show that don't know much about the Green Lantern mythos. So what is the history of the Green Lantern? I know that might be a big question, so just gonna kind of condense that down. Like, what is a little sort of bit to know that you need to know about the Green Lantern history of the comic book?
Okay. If we're going to talk about just main continuity, just to keep it,
not multiverse storylines.
yes. But, the second iteration, which is the iteration of the Green Lantern concept, is kind of the one that everyone knows kind of now, which is kind of the whole idea of that, Green Lantern is not a superhero in itself, but it's a title. It's actually a corps. It's actually thousands of Green Lanterns all over the universe that serve to protect their particular sector. So they're essentially space cops, but their power comes from the emotional spectrum, and they're part of where their power is rooted in is will, to overcome fear and to have the will to do something. So the stories are always based around that. So it's, there has been runs where it's been like a police procedural, where it's like more kind of solve a case, but then you have more outlandish things that can happen. And then you've got the power ring, which basically can create any constructs that the bearer actually wants, as long as they've got the willpower to do it. They do have to recharge their ring, so that also adds an element where they could do something massive, but that can be at the cost of how much power they've got left in their ring. So that adds the element of kind of danger, where they could be a Green Lantern could be fighting a massive villain and only has 10% of any power left in their ring, and they have to defend it. They have to defend it before the ring runs out, and they haven't had time to recharge.
So how does it? Because obviously, think about Green Lanterns, the Lanterns in general are part of the DC landscape. So they're in the same universe as Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman and the Flash, etc. Obviously, with Superman, and I'm a big Superman fan. Superman recharges from the yellow sun. How does the Lantern recharge their ring? The home planet of the Green Lanterns is Oa. Where there's these blue kind of aliens. They're kind of like they're like the Guardians, and they're the ones that imbue the power to all the Green Lanterns. And on that planet, there is what's called the central battery, and that's where the source of all the Green Lanterns' power is. And basically, each lantern has a ring, or a kind of a version of the ring, and then they have a battery, their own lantern, which they have to kind of use to recharge, and then they say the Green Lantern oath to recharge their battery, their ring. Oh wow, that's interesting. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so we've talked about the Green Lanterns. There are other color lanterns. Now this can be a bit of a tricky, for folks who don't really know much about the lore of the lanterns. So briefly, what I know there's the yellow ones and there's blue ones. What are the different lanterns, and obviously associated with the different color are different attributes and powers. So what is that?
Yeah. So this was a recent thing. This happened about 10 years ago or so, when Jeff Johns took over as the main writer of Green Lantern. He, which actually comes from an idea that comes from the 80s from what's his name? The guy who created Watchmen.
Oh gosh, I'm not a Watchmen fan, so I only know about the Zack Snyder version of Watchmen.
Yeah, my mind's just gone crazy now. I can't remember his name now.
You remember, though.
I know it's going to really annoy me in a moment. But yeah, so he did a short story where it was called, like, the Twilight of the Lanterns, where he brought this idea that there was actually different types of lantern. And that was expanded in Jeff Johns' run of Green Lantern in the late 2000s. So you have 8 different lantern cores that you have. You have the Green Lanterns that are powered by will, as I was saying. You have the Sinestro core, that's the yellow lanterns. They're powered by fear. You have the red lanterns that are powered by rage. You have the blue lanterns powered by hope. You have the violet lanterns that are powered by love.
Oh wow!
And the violet tribe. Oh gosh, I can't remember which one that one was. That always just escapes me. Then you have the black lanterns. They are death. And then you have the white lantern, which is life, which is basically only been one lantern has ever been a white lantern. And basically he took all the rings from each of the other lantern cores to create the white lantern. He's also my favorite Green Lantern too, which is Kyle Rayner.
Okay. Oh, tell us a little bit about that one then. That's interesting.
Well, it's a bit like Doctor Who, isn't it? Your favorite Doctor Who is your first one.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, when I first started to read Green Lantern in the 90s, Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern at the time,
Yeah.
So he's always been my personal favorite lantern.
Yeah.
For me, he kind of reflected a lot like who I'm like, kind of like I've always kind of liked to draw and write and stuff like that.
Creative, very creative.
So he was a graphic designer and was into anime and stuff like that. So his constructs were a lot different to the other lanterns. He was more complicated. He would make like, Gundam robots and mechs and stuff as constructs that he could create out of his Green Lantern ring. So I've always enjoyed that about him. So so that's what kind of why he's one of my favorites. And yeah, he did become the embodiment of all the lanterns and became the White Lantern for a time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lore Be With You podcast show on Christian Fandom Geek. I really appreciate every one of you who listen to the show via podcast player or on YouTube as Christian Fandom Geek. We're also on the Red 5 network as well. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this awesome project and enterprise. I've got some great collaborators on the show as well, having some awesome episodes, and we're really glad that you are part of the ride. Keep listening to the show. Also, you can follow the show on Twitter. If you put in the Lore Be With You podcast show or Lore Be With You, it will come up on Twitter as well. So if you want to interact with the show, leave a comment and leave a suggestion for future episodes. Would be really happy to engage with you as fans of the show. Keep safe, and we'll be with you very, very soon on the Lore Be With You podcast show.